Hello everybody, this is Mecha from Misfit. I know I keep saying it, and I really do mean it. We have another episode of Hit Can coming out soon. It's just that the audio mixing is taking a while. I tried to record some live Foley, there were some issues with that. This, that, you don't care. I want to have another fun update video coming up here soon too, but for now, I want to go over our first Clip Studio Paint specific animation drawing tips. And it's nothing too crazy, but it is something that I didn't have explained to me for a little bit, or not in a way that made sense to me and got me doing what I should be doing. So I'm going to do that with you guys now. So these are the two things that are saving my animation process. And what do I mean by saving it? It's not anything that's like unlocking new skills for me, but it is something that is making the workflow faster. And as if you animate, you know, workflow is a big part of it. So here's a scene that we already have. I'll play it without the keyframes on real quick. But basically we have guys swoop in. Woo, woo, woo. So first up, if we open up this file, and this is kind of, the majority of this is just organization. How to be organized and make things work in Clip Studio. So as you see, we have a folder that I call all. Sometimes I call it Tween Master. Sometimes I call it keyframes, characters, what have you. But I plop almost everything into another folder. So this is then broken up into foreground, characters, backgrounds, what have you. And the reason I do this is because everything in this folder has keyframes applied to it. And, or tweens, whatever the wording that we're using today is. So I can go, but what that does is that will eat up processor RAM, whatever the computer thing is that makes it go faster or slower. You know, it's eating up resources. So as you saw, when I hit play, it plays right away. It's great. Now, and one thing I also have that's helping that is if you go into animation, playback settings, play in real time, play all frames, there's a lot of things here. One thing that I have turned off right now is render 2D camera. I have a camera in the scene, which to make that, all you do is go in animation, new animation layer, 2D camera folder. Make sure that everything goes into the camera folder that you want to move around. If I have these things out, if I take all out of the camera folder, the camera will, when the camera moves, it won't, those won't be in the camera. So make sure they're there. But as you see, my camera has 3 keyframes. You can see the blue line. It starts up here. It comes out to here real fast and then eases out and zooms in. Now if we have animation, playback settings, render 2D camera on, it's not going to be for this one because it's a relatively short scene, it shouldn't take too long, but I hit play and you can see it's loading, it's taking time. Boom. That, because again, now, whereas before it was just drawings playing one at a time, we now have something that the computer has to actually quote-unquote render. So, and if you have that setting turned off, you can still pretty easily track where the camera is, I think. You know, you can watch it and see what's in frame, what's out of frame. It's up to you how important that is. For me, at least, because I do get that camera in there pretty quickly, it's just something that will eat up time. But along with that, I can turn this on or off. So all turn the keyframes on. This is doing the same thing, except for instead of doing it to the camera, it's doing it to all these guys. So if I hit play now, again, it's going to take a little bit of time. Again, it's short scene, so it's not too bad. But you can see all that kind of go in there. And so that's why I think it's useful to have all that organized, everything that gets keyframed into one thing, and turn those keyframes off. So now within this, let's open up one of my character animation folders. And you can see each frame of Flopsy here has a bunch of layers to it. I'm not, if I open up a new animation real quick, boop, 100 frames, sure, and I make folders and I hit new cell, that's just one thing. So if I want to then color it, I would need to either come here and, set background, if I can find it. Yes, and we'll just choose blue. And I would have to very carefully do that, which can get really messy. There's other tricks we can try, but if you've been in digital art for a while, you know the importance of layers. So how do we make it go from this to this? And I've talked about this before. Basically, you just come in, make a group, and now number one is that. And I can make as many layers with as much information on them as I want. I can change the layer modes of each of them, and I have control over them. I can turn one layer off, one layer on, all the good stuff. And now, as long as that is my first one, or not even if it's my first one, but if that's the one I have selected, and I hit new animation cell, you'll notice it duplicates all of those layers for the next frame. So basically, when you make that first cell, make sure that you have all the layers that you think you're going to want to work with. So for me, that is, I have 2 line layers here because I made some hiccup at some point. But basically, I'm going to want at least a sketch. Obviously, it's a sketch layer. If I turn everything else off, sometimes it's just that. But I have a sketch. I have a flat layer. So after I do my line work, I put in my flats. For this, it's really simple because I'm doing more of a storyboard than like a proper animation. I still like to have a shading layer in there just in case, that you can, even if you have it clipped down here, that clipping will go to the next one. And then a line layer or 2 in this case, which I like to use vector lines. You can use lines however you want, but that is like the bare minimum, I think, when you're animating. Because otherwise, the only other way that you could easily make a flat is if you duplicate, I say, draw a head here and then the head here. The only other way that I could easily color and do this is if I duplicate the entire folder and then I come in here and then I fill it in like that. So that way I don't have to worry about messing up my line work, and I can do that easily. And then you can just group them in. But that is more work down the line, whereas again, if you do it the way that I do it and just set up your layers and your cells right away, you can make as many new things as you want with all of these beautiful layers here ready to go. Now, even then, if anything that you leave up to that, you can be like, oh, what, I'm going to get confused, or I'll forget a layer, or that's still a lot of new layers, because as you see, it's nice to have them kind of named, so that's, every new character you put into your scene, you're going to go, new animation cell. Make sure you're at the beginning of where that cell is going to be. Boom, control, change that name. Boom, new character. It's going to get time consuming, depending on how many characters you haven't seen, how many scenes you're doing. This is just going to be annoying. So, the beauty of Clip Studio Paint, one of the beauties, auto action. Basically, you can set up Clip Studio Paint to have all sorts of cool things, like, what are some ones I have? Chromatic aberration, bloom, VHS, noise. Down here, my animation ones, character anim with layers. So what auto actions are is basically you hit one button and it creates a series of actions. If I open up my auto action panel, then you can see, and you can even have different groups of them. So animation actions, Sean Anim. Wow, I could not find that for some reason. And you have this, and you can just click here and hit play auto action, and it's going to go through, and there's a couple things. It will give you the option to change your names. Boom. So this extra one, so I have a highlight layer in here as well. I have and that's set to hard light, a shading multiply layer, and a sketch layer. And then this is I would call it sketch fill. I don't care, it's one, whatever. So you can do that, or as you can see, you can drag them into your toolbars and make it just as accessible as scale and rotate and all this other stuff. And the CSP store has a lot of auto actions ready to go. No one told me how easy it is to make an auto action, and it is kind of stupidly simple. So what you see here, and this is, if you look down here, this is all of the actions that auto action does. So obviously, new animation folder, change layer name. You get to, it has a default name in there. You can just press enter, or you can change the name. Which, so if I play that auto action again, I can say Flopsy, if I can spell right, Flopsy main, and then bang, bang, boom, boom, boom. So I know who that character is right away. Super easy and convenient. So, and if you pay attention, you might see that there's a little red dot button down here, where if you hover over it, it says start to record auto action. So if I come up here, and I close this down, and I hit add auto action. So you come over, by auto action, little 3 bars here, auto action, and let's just call this tutorial. And then once I'm done, ready to bring it in, I can do something. Let's say I want to make an auto action that makes an autofill, right? So we have this little blue dude over here. Hi, blue dude. So we know that we're gonna have our flat selected, and you can play with how intricate the auto action can be. Now let's go ahead and let's just go start to record auto action. So now anything that I do on the screen will be done in the auto action. So let's go select, and we can hit Control-Shift-I for invert selected area. So you can see it didn't record the select. I think that's because I'm hitting somewhere specific on the screen, and that's just too much for it to memorize. That's okay. And then let's say fill. So it looks like it's just going to fill with that. And then we'll say Control D for deselect. Hit the stop button. Boom. Let's see if that worked. So we make a new one. We'll do some more line work of our guy. Maybe he's turning up that way. We'll go into flat. Have your color selected. And we'll select our area. Hit play auto action. So that takes out, what, 3 button clicks that you'd have to do. Which, again, for some things, isn't that big of a deal. I just think that's a really cool action there. So, and now that's there, and let's just say that we really like that action. So go back to Sean Annam. Tutorial, I'm going to go ahead and call this inverse fill. And it should be just as simple as drag it over into your toolbar where you want it to be, and boom, it's there. So now you just click there if you ever want to use that auto action. And it's so easy to make them. And now you might be saying, well, what if I forgot to do something? Easy. Click, open your auto action, go to where you want to start recording, hit record, get your new action in there, stop recording. It's that simple. This, I cannot stress enough. Especially the one that I made of character animation folder with layers, it makes your life so much easier because you're doing work at the beginning. It really is very helpful. And I can add in things with the invert selected area, like shrink the selection down if I'm worried about, going outside the bounds and making it look better. But if you're animating and you're trying to make it more efficient, and you're trying to be like, again, these are little things that if you've been on Clip Studio for a while, you probably know. But if you just started, or you've been working in other programs, and you're coming over and you're trying to figure out, like, oh man, I can do this in Clip Studio Paint, it feels so natural, and you're trying to figure out what to do with this, this is kind of the best way to make this work for my workflow, at least. And I'm hoping that, we go in, make your own auto action like what I have, or find what you're missing in your workflow and do that. One more quick tip I want to talk about for making animation life a little bit easier in Clip Studio Paint is, remember this cool camera that we talked about? Yeah, that one. And it's really cool. I love it. I love it to death. There's a dark side to this camera. And it's not that bad. I still really like the camera in Clip Studio Paint. I like other cameras I've used in different programs a little bit more. But this one is really good. Again, considering the affordability of it, how accessible it is, it's great. But the issue I see with this camera that I at least don't remember seeing in other programs is that the amount it takes, it slows you down when playing back or rendering your final video export is monumental. I have made things where the camera just pans from here to here, and I just have, you know, my landscape shot or whatever behind it. Nothing else happening yet. Or, you know, maybe there's like a couple frame by frame animations. That doesn't really bog down the actual processing or rendering of it too much. And it goes from like that, rendering right away, to that long loading bar. And again, if you start going up to 300, 500, 1,000 frame exports, it's going to get real noticeable real fast. And I have theories why it takes that long. It could be wrong, doesn't really matter. I've noticed that takes time. Now you might be saying, well, I want to make cool camera pans. And again, don't discourage yourself from using the camera tool when it's applicable. But this trick that I have started using, which isn't that much of a trick, it's pretty simple, but makes life a smidgen easier. I have this really big animation file, which may actually take a little bit to load. It's basically this, again, nice dramatic panning shot that I got going on. And I have little animations playing in the background. And this is, let's see how many frames. To almost 2,500 frames. That will take, depending on your computer build and everything, that's going to take a while to export. And especially then you add in all the animation going on behind it. So, my workaround, you may notice there's no camera here. And I will play the current work in progress export of this, so you see what's going on. What I've done, and this also works because the slideshow stuff in the background I want to move independently from the background pan. But if I turn on the keyframes for this, you can see, again, they're all in one folder. So one of the things that does is I can grab them all and move it all together. And I still have my camera viewport here. So even though I'm not exporting a keyframe camera, there's still a camera viewport. So there's still something to work with here. And what I've done is I move all of that from one side to the other across that viewport, and that gives us a pseudo pan. And to make that even better, I, again, separate it up between midground, backdrop, etc., etc., and the things in the extreme foreground up here move a little faster than the rest of it. So hopefully, as I'm playing, the work in progress of this, you'll see how that creates a little bit of pseudo depth, and then you mix in the fog and do all this other fun stuff. Again, is it perfect? Oh, definitely not, but it's definitely something, I think. So these are things to keep in consideration to make your animation life easier. Auto actions to make and organizing your frames up top. Whatever action that needs to be, just roll with it. Sometimes, if it's like, if there was any more to this camera, like if I wanted the camera to, let's say, swoop in from up here, come down, do a little of this, come straight and then come back up this way. I wouldn't do all that with this because it's still possible, actually. There's no reason that you can't do it, but for me, my brain's going to start getting confused. Whereas with the camera, you can just go, I'm going to track this and go up and down. With this, you have to be like, okay, if I move it one way, how's it going to look in the camera? It's almost like trying to judge something by a mirror. Which, again, it's not impossible. But for me, it's a little difficult, and personally, I'm willing to sacrifice a little more render time to get that complex shot going. Just some things to think about. Not necessarily anything right or wrong, because again, even if you don't want to make my character auto action tool, you can make, and there's nothing stopping you from doing it the old-fashioned way. But I wanted to make sure that you were aware that this stuff existed, and there's a lot of accessible stuff out there for Clip Studio Paint, and I'm sure there's a lot of tutorials that talk about this and state it all better than me, actually. But I just decided that this was something that would be worth putting out there for y'all to see. I want it to be accessible and easy to stumble upon as possible. Keep making cool stuff. If you want, if there's any of these scenes that excited you necessarily, like this one, again, I'm working on it right now. It will go up eventually, but feel free to ask questions about it. If you like this one, it's in one of the Hit Cam episodes. This one is also in the Hit Cam episodes, and it's actually one where I used my Tonfa, my character auto action tool. You can see all the beautiful little layers there, and it's just right now they just have the sketches, but eventually, actually, did I use the auto action? I think I may have not even used the auto action, but see, just what you do. It's all set up so I can easily just come in. If I'm like, oh, I want to change that color, it's pretty easy. So there's a lot of fun there. Explore, see what works for you. Comment some of your favorite auto actions, whether they're for illustration or animation. Ask questions. Let's rock and roll. Make some cool stuff together. But till then, bye-bye.